Right now, FBI Director Kash Patel, the top federal investigator and domestic intelligence chief in the country, is facing a massive and growing list of scandals about his alleged alcohol abuse, absenteeism, paranoid abuses of power on the job. It's an incredibly embarrassing look for the Trump administration and a genuine threat to American security. But Trump doesn't seem to care about any of that, as long as it puts his administration in the spotlight.
FBI Director Kash Patel, does he get enough publicity? If you could get a little more publicity, it would be very...
It's almost like he's happy his FBI director is mired in scandal. All press is not good press, I don't think, there, Mr. Trump. Now, today, Kash Patel was on Capitol Hill facing questions from lawmakers about his various scandals, and Senator Chris Van Hollen pressed him on the reporting about Patel's alleged drinking habits.
I cannot imagine ever having to worry about former FBI directors Wray or Mueller spending multiple weekends drinking heavily at the Poodle Room in Las Vegas. So there have been no occasions during your tenure when FBI personnel were unable to promptly reach you?
Absolutely not. You can ask my entire workforce. They hear from me at every single hour of the day.
It's been written and documented.
You are literally saying it.
No, I'm saying that these are reports, Director Patel.
No,
and
unlike your baseless reports, the only person that was slinging margaritas in El Salvador on the taxpayer dollar with a convicted gangbanging rapist was you.
In your response to me earlier, where you had a little bit of a blow-up, you made a couple provably false statements.
So did you.
Do you know, Mr. Director, that it is a crime to lie to Congress? Do you know that?
I do not lie to Congress.
Okay. A couple of things to say about that. First off, when Patel accuses Senator Van Hollen of slinging margaritas on the taxpayer dime, he's referring to this photo. The photo I'm going to show you. There it is. When Senator Van Hollen traveled to El Salvador to check in on a man the Trump administration wrongfully sent to a notorious mega prison, Senator Van Hollen said at the time that the drinks you see on the table were actually put there by the government of El Salvador to make it seem like they were not abusing the prisoners at that facility. But more importantly, it's notable that Kash Patel is categorically denying that the story about his drinking was true. That story cited at least 9 sources for its various allegations about Patel's behavior. There were more people who came forward, according to the reporter, after the story was published. And Patel was so outraged by the story that 2 people familiar with the matter told MS Now that Patel has ordered polygraphs for dozens of members of his team in a desperate search for the people who leaked to that reporter. Now, it is hard to imagine why Patel would be hunting for leakers by using polygraph tests when he says the story is completely made up. That makes no sense. Patel has spent a lot of time and energy denying these specific stories about his alleged drinking. But we already know a good deal about his drinking habits from public accounts and things he said publicly. I mean, we have all seen the footage of Patel guzzling beer with members of the U.S. men's hockey team while on an official work trip. And it's not like Kash Patel was ever shy about talking about his drinking habits before he was the FBI director.
Sunday nights would roll around and the president would try to find me. I'd be like, sir, I am on call every day, including Sundays, except the very late evening, where Sundays are for God, hockey, and beer, not in that order. And I will resurface back on very early Monday morning.
It turned into Flannel Fridays because I was having this beer and I was wearing a flannel shirt. And now it's this massive thing online. I'm going to be on the sheet playing in the beer league, having a PBR, and then I'll return your phone call. Obviously, I'm kidding, but it was funny. We had this tradition every night where he would call it a final. So we'd have dinner and then we'd go somewhere and have like a final drink.
Everybody should have a beer or 3.
It's gonna be pretty lit. I might have some special apparel. We're gonna throw down. There's gonna be bourbon. There's gonna be sparklers.
We ended up in northern Italy and we were slamming Negronis at our last night. And I was like, Devin, I need a subpoena. I went to Devin and I told him that in the morning. He goes, dude, if you're gonna start drinking at 9 a.m., get out of my office.
Can I be the first one to say that if I ever go before Senate confirmation, they're going to call me an alcoholic?
His words, not my words. I mean, the guy had enough foresight to joke that he might one day face questions about his drinking. But now that he is actually in a big, important government job, he's very clearly outraged by those very questions from the Senate. Kash Patel's tenure as FBI director has been one embarrassing scandal after another from the very beginning. Tonight, just before we got on air, a former top career FBI official spoke out for the first time about the chaos in Patel's FBI. And in the early days of the Trump administration, FBI hostage negotiator Brian Driscoll was elevated to be the interim FBI director while Patel was being confirmed. And he says that right from the beginning, things were not going well.
Patel told you that as long as you were not prolific on social media, didn't donate to the Democratic Party, didn't vote for Kamala Harris in the 2024 election, that the vetting would not be an issue.
Yes, yeah, it's exactly. It's not funny, but that's exactly what he said. He's like, okay, just tell me if you voted for a Democrat in the last 5 elections. This conversation's over and conclude the phone call. So it's just disgusted and shocked.
Why were you disgusted?
Because now my fear that there was a political wave coming towards the FBI with vitriol directed at the FBI, it was palpable. And there was a sense of shock that, like, well, I'm really close to this thing.
Patel and his deputies were politicizing the FBI from day one of this administration. That's what you just heard from Brian Driscoll. And every day we learn more and more about how the FBI has been fundamentally changed under Patel's leadership. Just tonight, the news outlet Notice reports that the FBI has created a so-called payback squad, a team specifically comprised of agents who are willing to pursue Trump's political targets. That's according to 4 people who spoke to Notice on condition of anonymity. Everywhere you look in this administration, Trump is reshaping the government to focus on his personal priorities, to target his enemies, to focus on things he cares about. And he just doesn't care about what gets lost in the process. Michael Feinberg was an assistant special agent in charge at the FBI before being pushed out by Kash Patel. And Tim Weiner is a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter. He's the author of the book Enemies, A History of the FBI. And his latest book is called The Mission, the CIA in the 21st Century. Must-read books in the moment we're living in. Thank you both for being here. Let me start with you, Michael. There's so much I want to ask you about, but I want to start with what we learned today from Brian Driscoll and how he described his job security at the FBI under Patel as being reliant on his willingness to purge agents that investigated Trump. I mean, you not only worked under Driscoll, but you yourself were, of course. I think everybody remembers this, even though you help explain government and law enforcement to us every day. But you yourself were pushed out of the FBI for your connection to an agent who investigated Trump. What was your reaction to seeing him talk about all of that in the interview?
This is going to sound a little weird. I'm glad to see it finally coming out in the open because we all called him Driz. What Driz said in that interview was something we all knew, not just intuitively, but from the very profligate rumor mill that goes on at the Hoover Building in the FBI's field offices. It was no big secret that there were going to be political litmus tests for everyone. The weekend that I was informed I was under the radar, shortly before I resigned, one of my friends who is very high in the organization still gave me a heads up that if I was put in a position where I had to speak to either then Deputy Director Dan Bongino or Director Kash Patel, I should expect to be asked whom I voted for.
Mm-hmm. So it's not surprising. And it seems like it's kind of an unspoken thing that everybody knew that this had happened to him. And now he's finally coming forward, which is certainly significant. I wanted to ask you about another story, because today House Judiciary Democrats accused the Justice Department of improperly paying out FBI agents who were suspended for misconduct, but who appear to be political allies of Trump. I mean, this taken together with Driscoll's account seems to paint a picture where people who signed up to be career officials, non-political, are being asked to do something that is certainly not what they signed up for, at the risk of termination, I guess. How do you see it?
I think that's a very accurate way to put it. In a different environment, I might put it a little more bluntly and a little more harshly. But what we're seeing now runs fundamentally counter to the idea of an apolitical law enforcement or intelligence community apparatus. And it's worth noting, many of the agents who have now received settlements or been reinstated, when they were forced out to begin with, I believe a number of them received funding from a foundation run by Kash Patel himself when he was outside of government.
It's like bribery.
It's certainly some form of corruption, I think.
Let me bring Tim into this conversation. And Tim, another part of Driscoll's interview that stuck out to me was when he said that Patel told him, quote, the FBI tried to put the president in jail and he hasn't forgotten it. I mean, it's a very straightforward way of kind of calling out this obsession, I should call it. In your view, does that fundamental disdain for the institution itself explain why he doesn't seem to care if the integrity or effectiveness of the FBI is being jeopardized under Patel?
You know, Jen, back in 2020, in the first Trump administration, Trump's Attorney General Bill Barr, who's not a woke snowflake, said that the idea of putting Kash Patel in charge of the FBI, which was a very live idea back then, was the height of insanity, that it would happen over his dead body. Things haven't improved very much. When Patel is a conspiracy theorist, he is conducting, an ideological purge at the FBI. He has decimated the ranks of national security, intelligence, counterintelligence, counterespionage people, and we're at war. And we're at war with Iran, which has had terrorist proxies running around the world since the 1980s. Not an opportune time to take out the Iran squad, as Patel did. All of this in the name of retribution. All of this in the name of payback for investigating the crimes of Donald Trump.